The house was quiet, too quiet
What
for
is
a
this
mansion of
for?
its size. Rain tapped softly against the tall glass windows, and the man sitting in the grand leather chair could not shake off the strange ache in his chest. James Whitmore, a man whose name was known in every corner of the business world, had everything people usually craved: wealth, power, and influence. Yet at that moment, he felt empty, staring at the gold-plated card in his hand, remembering the one woman who had used it not for luxury, but for something that shattered him from the inside out. He thought he had seen it all: greed, betrayal, ambition. But what his maid chose to buy with his card was something he would never forget. Before I take you deeper into this powerful and heart-stirring story, I want to pause for a moment and invite you, dear listener. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the hidden battles people fight every day, then please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Stories. Every click helps us spread more stories that touch the soul and remind us of the good still left in this world. James had been known in New York's elite circles as the man who never bent, never gave away anything for free. His empire had been built brick by brick through ruthless business moves and a heart hardened by betrayal. His wife had left him years ago, taking half of his fortune, and his only son refused to speak to him, blaming him for always putting work before family. He lived alone in a mansion that echoed with silence, save for the footsteps of his small staff. And among them was Maria, a quiet maid in her late 30s who carried herself with dignity despite her modest position. She never complained, never asked for more than her wages, and worked tirelessly, keeping his home spotless while disappearing into the background like a shadow. But James was not blind. He noticed things others would not. He noticed how Maria's hands trembled when she thought no one was watching, how her shoes were worn thin and patched in places, how she often wrapped leftovers to carry home after her shifts. He once saw her staring at the piano in his lounge, her eyes filling with tears before she quickly wiped them away and returned to her duties. There was a sadness about her, a heaviness she carried, though she never spoke of it. The turning point came one evening when James returned home earlier than usual. He found Maria in the kitchen, struggling with a phone call. Her usually calm face was twisted with fear as she whispered into the phone. He only caught fragments, words like hospital, treatment, and please wait. When she hung up, she wiped her tears quickly and turned, startled to see her employer standing there. She stammered an apology, but James, for reasons he could not explain, felt something stir in his heart. For the first time in years, he felt compelled to do something not for business, not for profit, but out of raw, human compassion. The next morning, without asking her questions she might find humiliating, he placed his black credit card on the counter. "Take it," he said in his usual gruff tone. "Buy whatever you need." Maria froze, staring at the card as though it were a burning coal. "Sir, I can't." But James pushed it toward her with finality. "No questions. No excuses. Just do what you need to do." Maria took it with trembling hands, tears glistening in her eyes as she whispered a thank you. James expected her to spend it on rent, groceries, maybe a new set of clothes. Perhaps, he thought cynically, she might even use it for herself. To escape her lowly life for one brief moment. But when the statement arrived days later, what he saw broke him in ways no betrayal or failed deal ever had. There were no charges from expensive stores, no luxury handbags, no fine dining bills. The first charge was from a children's hospital in Brooklyn. Then came pharmacies, medical supply stores, and finally, a small floral shop. James felt a lump rise in his throat as he read the details. His mind went back to Maria's whispered phone call. Without hesitation, he called his driver and demanded to know where she had gone that evening. Hours later, he found himself standing outside a small, modest hospital ward that smelled faintly of antiseptic and hope. Through the glass, he saw her. Maria sat beside a hospital bed where a little boy lay pale but smiling weakly, clutching a stuffed toy. She held his hand, speaking to him softly, her eyes full of love and exhaustion. James' chest tightened painfully. He asked the nurse nearby, who explained gently that the boy was Maria's son, Daniel. 8 years old. Diagnosed with leukemia. For months, Maria had been working double shifts, saving every penny, skipping meals, all to afford his treatment. But it was never enough. She was drowning in debt, her life consumed by hospital visits and sleepless nights, yet she had never once complained to her employer. James stood frozen, his heart breaking with every word. He realized the truth then: Maria had not used his card for herself. She had used it to give her son a chance at life. To buy medicine that kept him breathing, to pay for treatment that gave him hope, to place flowers by his bedside so he could smile in that cold, sterile room. The realization hit James like a tidal wave. He had given her something small, something he considered insignificant, yet she had turned it into a lifeline. That night, James could not sleep. He walked the empty halls of his mansion, his mind haunted by the image of that fragile boy and the strength of his mother. He thought of his own son, who had once clutched his hand the same way, before years of neglect and distance tore them apart. Guilt washed over him, sharper than ever. He realized that while he had been chasing millions, he had lost the most precious bond of all. Maria's love for her son rekindled something he thought he had buried forever. The next day, James visited the hospital again, this time stepping inside the ward. Maria looked up, startled, fear flashing in her eyes. She began to apologize, thinking she had overstepped, but James raised a hand gently. He walked to the bedside, introduced himself to Daniel, and for the first time in years, James felt a smile spread across his face. He brought gifts, books, toys, and even a portable keyboard when he learned the boy loved music. Daniel's eyes lit up with joy, and Maria's tears flowed silently. But James did not stop there. He hired the best doctors, paid for every treatment, and even set up a trust fund to secure Daniel's future. Maria tried to protest, saying she could never repay him, but James shook his head. "You already have," he said softly, though he never explained what he meant. What Maria had given him was something far beyond repayment. She had given him back his humanity, the ability to feel again, to love again. Over the months, James became a regular visitor at the hospital. He read stories to Daniel, played piano with him, and even learned to laugh again. Slowly, he began reaching out to his estranged son as well, apologizing for years of absence and trying to rebuild what was lost. It wasn't easy, but he was trying, because Maria and Daniel had reminded him of what truly mattered. The millionaire who once believed money was everything discovered that the greatest wealth lay not in gold or stocks, but in the bonds of love, sacrifice, and kindness. And it all began with a simple act: handing his maid a credit card. As we draw near the end of this story, I want to ask you from the heart, if this story touched you, if it reminded you of the power of love, sacrifice, and second chances, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Your support helps us continue to bring you stories that inspire and heal. And before we close, here's a special request: drop a comment below and tell us, what does kindness mean to you? We would love to read your thoughts. James would never forget the day his maid used his credit card. For most, it was just a piece of plastic. For Maria, it was a lifeline. For Daniel, it was a chance to live. And for James, it was the beginning of redemption. Sometimes, the smallest act of trust can change not just one life, but many. Sometimes, what breaks your heart also puts it back together again.